Extremism is the most intolerant ideology in the world today, and it's one which a lot of people think they have to tolerate, because if they don't, they themselves will be regarded as intolerant. I think that's not just stupid. In the final analysis, it's suicidal.
Islam, when it is in a minority, is extremely good at talking about tolerance. In a minority, Islam loves to talk about the tolerance that people must show towards minorities. One of the things, however, if you look around the world, and I'm sure I don't need to tell you this, is that whenever Islam is in a majority, minority rights are nowhere to be seen. It's a one-directional talk of minority rights. When Islam is in a minority, it talks of the importance of human rights. When it is in a majority, those human rights, including the most basic human rights, like the rights of women to be considered equal beings, are thrown right out the window.
There are all of the problems of the world, all the problems of the jihad, all the problems of violence come down to us. It's all to do with the Iraq war, it's all to do with Afghanistan. You've heard it a million times, this is not new stuff. But I would stress to you that if that argument were true, take it seriously for a moment, and we should, if that argument were true, it doesn't explain quite a lot of things. In other words, as well as being, in a fundamental way, I believe, racist, i.e. the people who are doing the acts are not responsible. They don't even have culpability. They can't even make choices. They can't even screw up unless it's our fault. Now, apart from that, it is also simply historically inept. If it is our fault, ladies and gentlemen, perhaps Mr. Yacoub and Mr. Livingston could answer this, if all of the problems of the jihad are our fault, why are currently, and have been for a long time, Muslims slaughtering Hindus in India? Why are they slaughtering, and have been for a long time, Buddhists in Indonesia and Thailand? Why are they murdering animists in South Sudan? Is that the Iraq war? Are we going to relay that one at the fascist junker of Bush and Blair as well?
This gentleman there talked about, going to the protest of the Pope rally. If I may say so, this, I wasn't there. I didn't approve of the protest because there were various things around it I think are complete guff. One of them is the fact that people love saying they went to the protest of the Pope thing. The Pope, the sort of, Pope's not on board with gay marriage. I'm a gay man. I'd love to have gay marriage approved by the Catholic Church. But, they're not going to. Meantime, I really, really wish that people would reserve their ire for the people who don't just want to stop me marrying, but want to throw me off a cliff. Much better way to spend your time. But of course people love it because they think, oh, I'll attack the Islamists, but then to be allow myself to do that, I can attack the Pope to show I'm not a racist. Show me a Monsignor, grab me a cardinal, and I can attack them because that will allow me. This is left-wing nonsense.
Well, I'd first of all say absolutely not to do with our actions abroad, but put that in with one rider. If it were the case that because of our foreign policy people think they have the right to blow up people going to nightclubs and to blow up those fleeing from the first blast, as seems to be the case, then I'd say you have a choice in front of you. Much like the choice we had a few weeks ago over whether or not Britain, the British state, has the right to decide who gets knighthoods, or whether crowds in Pakistan who burn books they can't read have that right. And we have the same choice now, which is whether or not British foreign policy will be run by the British government in the interests of the British state, which I think is the case, or whether or not we just allow other people who let off bombs here or in Baghdad or anyone else who want to terrorize us, whether we allow them to run our foreign policy. That's the choice before us.
So what's your answer to the question? The cause
the
of the
answer
terrorism?
is that the cause of the terror is Islamist fundamentalism, which is a version of Islam, a politicized version of Islam, which is wreaking havoc across the globe and has been doing so for many years, and which was aiming to attack this country and our allies before the invasion of Iraq, before the invasion of Afghanistan, and indeed even before 9/11.
Douglas is so right, and where he basically lays out these facts. That is foreign policy, whether it's being done by the British government, whether it's done by, the United States policy, or for that matter, any Western democracy foreign policy. Look, there are geopolitical dynamics that are being played out by countries all across the world. Obviously, the strongest country in the world, the United States of America, and then I guess, you might as well basically put, China and Russia and some of these other communist regimes into play as well. Well, they've got foreign policy too, obviously. Now, the question is that do you allow a small minority of people through the acts of fanaticism, through the acts of terrorism, through the acts of any type of ideology, whether it be religious ideology or cultural ideology or fundamentalist ideology of any type, dictate to the majority of the country, to the government of a country, to say either you stop that foreign policy, we don't like that foreign policy, and if you don't, there will be consequences in the form of, now you want to protest foreign policy? Protest all you want, as long as the protest doesn't cross a line of incitement to violence or cause injury or harm or incite. You want to protest a foreign policy or protest a domestic policy or whatever, perfectly fine, but that's not what's going on. They're basically saying, stop the foreign policy or else you will suffer the consequences of our wrath. We will do whatever is necessary by any means, terror, incitement, violence, whatever you want to call it, destruction. We're going to do that. And you can't succumb to that. It's like they basically say to kidnappers, you can't pay ransoms to kidnappers because it just beholdens the next group of people that want to do a kidnapping. They say, well, they paid before, they'll do it again. And you just keep upping the ante, upping the ante, upping the ante. And this cannot be allowed. Unfortunately, Western governments, Western democracies have acquiesced some of their, I guess, foreign policy matters in terms of that. At least they start thinking about, well, maybe we should back away. Maybe that'll help. That'll help to, bring down the level of rhetoric. It's not going to happen, folks. It's not going to happen. You need to be on the offensive. You need to know that you stay strong with this. And that's what the governments have to do. Unfortunately, in the United Kingdom, you folks over there, man, you got a bunch of pussies in the MP and the Parliament and your Prime Minister. We've got the same thing over here in the United States of America too, folks. Anyways, that's what's on tap for you today, folks. We've got Douglas Murray being given some of his best samples of when he's speaking concisely and precisely. That's what I want to do. Give you my political prescription from my political perspective of what happens when you get Douglas Murray out there talking, combining, and basically everything's colliding. Social media, Islamism, fundamentalism, culture, religion, politics, government. Let's get back to more of the best of Douglas Murray.
Israel, what other country would get this crowd out tonight if we had it in the title? Syrian government just hours ago sent its own troops in and massacred people in a mosque in Syrian territory. But would you have a motion here? Well, Holloway got you all out on a pleasant Wednesday evening. Are we too critical of Syria? No. No, very sure we wouldn't. Saudi government's just been pimping out its own troops, the government of Bahrain, and gunned down the people of Bahrain's streets. Would you come out to discuss, are we too critical of Bahrain? Are we too critical of Saudi? No. Because international efforts led by propagandists at the moment seek only to demonize one nation in the world, and that nation is Israel.
The wider Middle East has very significant problems, quite enough problems of its own. People talk about the Middle East as if it were just this issue. It's really quite low-level conflict, as if it isn't all of the other issues in the region, not least the issue of Iran sponsoring terror groups and breaking all international obligations in its pursuit.
Like Hezbollah, Houthis.
The problem for Mr. Obama is considerable
Hamas.
And hasn't been made any easier by the Nobel Prize award. I was in Rome last Friday and I heard the news. I just got off a plane and I have to say I thought I must have got sunstroke when
Good old Bay Rake.
I don't think the Nobel Prizes mean very much. Certainly they haven't for peace ever since Yasser Arafat won one, and indeed since Henry Kissinger won one.
He got it because he was
Nobel
black.
Prizes for literature have meant even less
Period.
since Dario Fo and Harold Pinter won them. So Barack Obama, by the way,
going to help him.
no, it's going to make it.
No, it's not
going
to
to
help him.
nightmarish for him. I mean, awarding the Nobel Peace Prize to Barack Obama is like giving the Nobel Prize for literature to a person who has yet to write their first book. He hasn't done
Nice
it.
one.
But the expectations now are monstrous.
Could we talk a little bit about democracy and what the democratic society is? I agree with my predecessor here that the rule of law here is central, and equality before the rule of law, and indeed equality generally. In Britain at the moment, we have a very worrying development with the introduction recently of a parallel system of banking, of Sharia banking, which the Financial Times recently wrote an extraordinarily dry and supine supplement all about. The attempts to influence the British government into introducing Sharia law is another one. Now, I don't think that this should be hard to counter, because the thing you do to counter it is quite attractive to most people, which is to say that equality is not something you're going to give up, and it's not something you're going to not share around a bit. And equality means that if I go into a bank, I get the same loan as a Muslim does when they go into a bank, and the same kind of mortgage. And that if I go before the courts of Great Britain, I will be treated in exactly the same way as a girl who's an immigrant who's been in the country for a year, who might have a different set of beliefs from me, but lives in the same country under the same law. And I think that's an attractive proposition, and something which a democratic state will always have on its side.
Once again, Douglas Murray putting the dart right in the center of the bullseye. Basically saying, equality before the law. What is this with Europe, Western Europe, in trying to allow and acquiesce some of their sovereignty in law by allowing, Sharia courts to exist? Now, if a small town or let's say, a community or somebody want to exercise within their own homes, let's say, or their own community, a type of Sharia law, I don't think, unless that, I don't think that should be done, period. But I don't think there's anything within the law of Western European governments, United States of America, that could effectively shut those down. What I basically mean to say, let's say you're in a community and there's Muslims that are in that community, and let's say we decide to have a Sharia law, a Sharia court that you have in the community. Now, if it's voluntary, it should not. It's not legally binding. It's not. By any means, anybody that partakes in it has to abide by whatever the rulings are. But it's a mutually agreed thing. It's like two people getting together and signing a contract without a lawyer present and just shake hands and say, you know what, we agree, or something's put down. But if, let's say, two people decide on something that way, or groups of parties decide on something, and then they decide that, you know what, we don't really want to do that. We want to take you to court now. It shouldn't be, Sharia law already decided that. So I hope you get my point there. It's kind of a, in terms of where I don't see how you're going to be able to, shut those down in a democratic society, unless they're doing something completely illegal. But to have a lot of this happens with marriages and divorce. So in the community, it'd be no different than you going to your priest or to the rabbi and asking for, how do we solve this situation between these two people, husband and wife? Now, whatever the church does, or the synagogue does, or the cleric does, or whatever, right? Whatever the, rabbi or priest or reverend or minister, whatever they do, or it's not binding. It is not binding upon them. It is a suggestion that's being done and said, this is what you guys ought to do, and let's see if we can resolve this together without really going to court, lawful court. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already, we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow. You all know what to do. Take a look at other video links above and below. Share your comments. Love to hear what your thoughts are. My final thought is always, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.